then with the years and with the experience, you realize more about, you learn to read the cave better. So you learn to just like see what the water does and where you want to go and all of those things. That's what experience does.
Yeah.
So that's why it is so important to give it time. Don't be too much in a hurry.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. During my trip to Mexico, I had a chance to sit down with Mauro Bordignon. From his first breaths while at university, he quickly became introduced to the world of overhead environments. A relentless motivation for exploration has led him worldwide to search for the undiscovered. Equally, he is motivated to instruct, mentor, and coach the next generation of explorers. Past and future explorations, moving to the Yucatan, Tren Maya, having the right mindset, Fathom Rebreathers, crashing weddings, and much more. Please enjoy. Mauro, I would like to welcome you to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good, thank you. Nice. And welcome, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm excited to hear more about your journey, more about your story. I'll just throw out my first question. Tell me how and why you became scuba certified. Like, what led up to that moment, the how, the why. How was that first breath? Tell me about that first experience.
Well, I was always little adventurous, so I always did hiking and all of the sports that I could do, being close to the mountains, in Italy. Actually, I had my eyes and my mind set on paragliding, to be honest, because where I live is very, very popular. But I did not have the money to buy the equipment and stuff. And then I started working when I was in university with a friend, still one of my best friends back home, in an Irish pub. So I was working in the evenings, the work you do when you're in college and stuff. And he was a diver. So it was you have to try it. So I went for the first class, which was in a swimming pool that the club used to use for teaching. And I loved it. I mean, it was a swimming pool. So nothing, not like those lucky guys that get to dive the first open water in the Red Sea or Discovery Scuba. But just, it was the feeling of being I'm sitting at the bottom of the pool and I'm looking up and I'm breathing. I can stay here as long as I want, so to speak. So that was very, very cool.
Okay. So you liked that first moment. From that first moment, did you know that you wanted to pursue it and go take that next class? How was the progression from that first breath?
It was exactly a progression, meaning I didn't know right away, but I was very captivated by it. So that was a tryout that was followed immediately after by my first class. It's a bit of a different system, last a few months. So I think it was 3 months every Wednesday plus the Sundays to get my first star, as they used to call it back then in the Civil Federation. And that was it. After that I was completely hooked. In the area where I live, where I used to live in Italy, there's 3 major caves, and one is very popular, or used to be very popular at least, also with open water, because it has a 20-meter pool before the entrance. So freezing cold, but we didn't care back then. Talking about 97, 98, probably my whole perception was different. And we used to go and enjoy the pool. And I could see the scuba diver, cave divers going in and doing all that. And I was my imagination was go crazy. And that was what caught my attention. And I made it a full-time commitment in the end. I didn't start like that, but that's what it became, basically.
Okay. So you were introduced to the caves pretty early on, very early on.
Yeah, I did a few dives in a quarry that we use for practice. But then after 4 or 5 dives, that's one of the spots that they took us just to show us around a bit of diversity. It's 15 minutes from where I used to live. so it's very convenient. So it was that and the lakes, but like looking down and seeing the black entrance straight down, that was like, yeah, that was what I found more interesting.
Yeah,
the most interesting thing.
No, for sure. That's crazy to think about, because I know, like, for some people, like when I describe it, the first couple times I went to the ocean and you just like look into the open blue, I'm like, what's out there? Like, I want to know, like, I want to go deeper. I want to, I did the recreational thing for a very, very long time. And I was very happy with it, just the sport or recreational sport. I don't know what you'd want to classify it as, but when you started, you knew you wanted to go into the caves. Obviously there's a higher level of training. Is that when you stepped up, like, okay, I need multiple tanks, I need different gear? Like, how did that all progress?
The way I got introduced to it, it was more from a caving point of view, meaning I love the ocean. I started right away with my first Red Sea trip and so on. But again, my main call was like the cave was like kind of like attracting me more. So as soon as I approached those guys from the area that used to do the cave diving, they told me, okay, yeah, perfect. But we're a caving club, so you need to come and take the caving class with us.
Is it like dry caving?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rappelling, dry caving. There's like multiple caves beyond 1,000 meters like close by, and so I got introduced to this by them, basically as a request, and I liked it. So it was a combination of the two things. And then the class that I took, the cave diving style, was a little bit different. I don't know if we can call it the French style. So let's say a little bit less regulated than what you learned, for example, in your caving class or stuff like this. And actually, when I moved here in 2007, although I was like cave diving since already like 9 years, but I was asked to be able to work in here originally as a cabin guide, to be full cave certified. So I took my cave class again in here, and I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. There was a lot of things that was like, well, that makes sense. And there's like techniques that are still applied today, which made way more sense than how I started. Visual jumps, but multiple lights, all of that kind of stuff was pretty common back then in Europe. So,
okay.
It was like...
Can you tell me a little bit about the other differences? Because I know, is it the CDG? The CDG, they're a caving club. Like they're I don't want to butcher it, but I know that they do a lot of dry caving as well as cave diving, right?
Yes.
And then, but their standards are pretty different than your normal full cave class.
It is pretty different.
Is it like that?
It's like, we can say it is similar. So CDG, first of all, have a very unique environment. They do not have extensive caves. I mean, like they do, but it's like, but not what we can picture as a cave, like a main big tunnel. It's like little ponds crawling through, then it opens up and you have a beautiful room, but then you're back to zero visibility. So it's a world by itself, and that's why they're always like super strong divers. They're like not afraid of cold or zero visibility and stuff. We do have caves that are actually pretty big. Where I am, like some of the main caves in Europe outside of France, I would say one of them goes down now it just got pushed to beyond 200 meters, and that cave, Elefante Bianco, is like huge from the beginning to the end of line. One example that I can give you is that zero visibility is never an issue there, because they always have flow, so they're cleaner. They don't have, for example, now in Mexico where we are, you experienced, of course, reduced visibility because you go through narrow passages and stuff. And that's more relevant, especially if you go to new caves. But even in the popular training sites and stuff, you do have more percolation or more silt in the bottom. That does not exist in European caves because they have a lot of flow. So the flow cleans it out and stuff. So the only reason why you will have zero visibility would be, for example, if all of your lights get out. So there used to be the habit was to have this helmet with 5 or 6 lights, or like talking about a long time ago, so bad quality lights compared to what we have now, but abundant. So okay, and the line protocols were different. We did not connect line to line, which looking back now is pretty stupid because it takes 2 seconds and saves your life. But again, having enough light, you could recognize your way back. And and you would do a progression, so you would get to know the cave, and it was substantially different. Let's say the equipment was different. You used to have a dry suit as a buoyant, for the main buoyancy, and a bladder underneath in between the dry suit and the overalls, and then the tanks would have just like a harness, but no backplate, no wing. So you would just strap the tanks on you. And it was let's say it was more of like, I don't know, it was more challenging and more like a do-it-yourself kind of style.
So what prompted the move to Mexico? Like had you been here before you decided to move here? Like just heard about the caves? Like how did Mexico come into the picture?
So after I finished university, I decided to go. I'd been to Egypt a couple of times, to the Red Sea. And I decided to go there and enjoy 6 months to a year, depending, of just like, working as a dive master. I was a dive master back then. And then it was like, well, maybe a little bit more, because they offered me to work on liverboards. And that's like, maybe I can do this until I'm 30, and then I can eventually like think of what I want to do when I'm old, when I'm big, grow up. And then I'm like, I met 2 guys that had been in Mexico before. They were like next door of mine working with me. And they were like, oh, well, we plan to move back to Mexico. It's awesome. You should join us. And of course, I had all of the National Geographics with, pictures of the cenotes and this and stuff, whatever. I was already dreaming about that. And when like the opportunity came, well, guys, like once you move back, let me know how it goes. Let's stay in contact. Like, hey, everything is great. We have this, we work for this company. You should come and check it out and so on. And so like, I'm moving there. Okay. It went a little bit different because I moved in here in 2007, July, 1 week after we had Hurricane Dean, if I'm not mistaken. So it was absolutely no work until November. But I survived somehow. And then November 2007, March 2008, I started working through the winter for a dive center. We had the swine flu. So that was it. So that's when I was like, well, there's nothing to do, but I came here to explore. And that's when I started exploring caves. Okay. So, I mean, it actually just like worked out one way or another.
Yeah. What part did you move? Was it like Playa, Tulum?
I moved to Akumal.
Oh, okay.
And I lived there for like 9 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm just curious. I want to get back to the exploration part, but I'm sure it's grown quite a bit. Like, was it just a pretty small town, pretty small area, not much going on when you first moved here?
Well, it grew like crazy. When I moved in here, it was popular, but it was nothing like it is now from both points of view. From the cave diving point of view, the whole cave diving scene exploded. I think when I moved in here, well, I can like count them eventually, and I think there was like 12, 13, maybe 15 cave instructors.
Oh, wow.
Now I think you can multiply that by 10.
Yeah.
So it got, let's say it went from something that was considered an extreme activity, it got like declassified as something like way more accessible to the public. But then from a touristic point of view, there was like a boom. I mean, you didn't hear about Tulum much until 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
Now Tulum is the place to be. So yeah, we're building like crazy, and well, as you know, like there is a little bit of concern, especially in our community, that it's not happening in a way which is very friendly to the environment, especially with the train going on. But the train is the most evident car because it goes from north to south and it cuts through the whole jungle. But it goes very much together with what is happening with the big resorts, with all of these condos. Sometimes I wonder, like, okay, who's gonna go and like buy or rent these thousands and thousands of condos that they're building? But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, obviously somebody thinks there's a need for it. And to be honest, I actually just saw the train today for the first time. We went to...
You passed it on the No Hotch Road.
Yes.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, I didn't see the actual train. I just saw the tracks.
Yeah.
But it was definitely kind of mind-blowing to just think that, a couple years ago, there was just all jungle. Yeah.
That's not even the worst. If you go in from Chimuyil, it's where they have one of the main quarries for concrete. So there's it's way bigger, way wider. You can see where they been taking material out. It's it's pretty tough.
Yeah, that's got to be crazy considering, how long you've been here to see something like that go on, just absolute destruction. And I'm sure, not the results, that's not the word I'm looking for, but the effects won't be seen for probably a couple of years when it starts running a lot more, more traffic, more trash, more population. That's definitely got to be a bummer. And I know there's a few groups going around that were trying to fight against the train, but obviously it didn't.
It's a very sensible matter. You can't fight progress.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be always somebody that wants to develop it. But it's pretty wild development, without keeping in consideration what this area represents in terms of hydrology, for example, and also the not really. They're kind of ignoring the safety concerns about building on top of a cave. So yeah, I mean, 2-3 years we might see some outcome, but in the long term, I'm afraid that in 15-20 years, when the structure, because those pillars they're putting in the water is not going to be unaffected by water. So they will affect the aquifer, but the structure will be affected. So, okay, there's thousands of those. I doubt in 25 years we're going to take them all out and replace them. So we will see what happens.
Yeah. So back to the exploration side, you came here and you said, the couple things happened, the hurricane and then the swine flu. You just decided to start exploring. Have you explored unmanned cave? I don't think that would be the right. Have you done much?
You could say Virgin Cave.
Virgin Cave. There we go. Had you been to Virgin Caves before, prior to Mexico?
No, I haven't. And this was the reason why I came here. I mean, my end goal was always to explore caves. So, if I still do it, what is it? 26, 27 years later, that's a strong drive. So I had that in mind. The swine flu was I have nothing to do. I took my cave class. I don't have scooters. I don't have many stages. I remember one of the explorations was long enough and deep enough, although I'm talking about 50, 60 feet, 15 meters. But I was diving on air back then, still, so it was long enough that I had to do deco. So I could not, there was already nitrox, but whatever, I had no money because of the no work. So I used to do I'll keep doing it on air, bring a little 40. And I remember in a cave called Palomita, I used to do my deco jammed into a chimney. And, it was the best time of my life. I remember coming out in the evening. I was coming out and the bats were coming out because it was getting dark. So it was all I was doing back then. So yeah, the swine flu was just okay, now the moment comes because anyway you have nothing to do. And then it was an evolution from there on. For me personally, in terms of skills, in terms of gear, in terms of mentality. So I was lucky enough to get in here when there was still a lot of cave. Not easy accessible, no hodge had been done. All of the stuff which is big, Dos Ojos, all of the stuff that has, the stuff from Big Cenote has major tunnels, was already discovered, but you can always add.
Yeah.
So there was still like a lot of cave. And a few years later, like around 2011, I think, we started exploring the area down in Muyil, which is 20 kilometers, a bit more, south of Tulum. And that was like a virgin area. And there's like, I don't want to exaggerate because I don't know the latest numbers, but I would say 200 kilometers of cave just in that area, but used to be virgin, completely virgin. Cenotes like Caterpillar, Doggy, which I was lucky enough to be one of the first to find and explore it, basically.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I have a question. You're saying like the skill level, the mentality. Can you go into that a little bit more, like the mentality side of it, of wanting to explore? And then, I guess actually before the mentality side of it, another question I always like to ask is, was it easy to find people that wanted to go out and explore? I would assume in this area it is. People are just like, let's go, driving for it. Like, hey, I came down here to explore. Was it easy to meet other people with the same mentality, same skill level to go out and explore these places?
Yes, actually, as I said, I came in here with the idea of exploration. And the first guy that I met that had the same project was another Italian guy, Alex Reato, and we started exploring together. Our first project was Shunanha. We took this cave that had been explored mostly by French people. The main cave was 9 kilometers, and now it's a 60-kilometer system, and we did most of it. So that was our first big project. And with Alex, we are we're friends, we're different people, we have sometimes different ideas of exploration, but it was very good because, for example, on an exploration point of view, we were very complementary because I was always the one that wanted, you know what, I don't care if I swim 3 hours, if I swim for 4 hours, I want to go far and see where it goes. While Alex, for example, is somebody that does the cave very methodically in every little passage, and that's why he became an awesome cartographer, for example. And after that, I was lucky. I found other people. And this goes together with the change in mentality a little bit. We would go out in the jungle together, but our exploration will always be like solo diving, which is something that I did for many, many years. And that, it was more drive and having a mindset that was compatible with doing solo diving, a small cave. That's what I used to have back then. So for me, it was just like, I want to see what's there. And so it was mostly squeezing through little holes and stuff and whatever. And I didn't have many buddies that could do that kind of diving with me. It's only many years after, now I dive mostly with one buddy, Osama, and with him I know that I can do all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But my mentality about solo diving and stuff changed through the years. Not because I feel now I couldn't do it, but I don't think it is kind of the right example to give. Yeah. Meaning, you grow up, and if I look back, I have to recognize that I've done a lot of stupid shit. Meaning, there was a moment in which, I always kept my cool. So that's why I'm still here and to tell you the story. But there was a few dives that I was like, well, you know what? Maybe those last 5 minutes were a bit too much. So you have this tendency to always push if you're a very driven person. And I find out that if I have somebody else with me, even if I know that they're perfectly, they have the same skill set and they're very strong divers and stuff, I'm more concerned in putting the other person also in a bad situation. So that's one of the things. I'm not condemning it. I'm not saying people cannot go solo diving. Everybody's responsible for their thing. We have these guys doing solo climbing or solo freeze. free climbs, and so everybody's responsible for life and to do whatever. But I think it's a bit of a tricky thing with diving. I realized through the years that a lot of people that really love cave diving and have this fascination for exploration look at us, and especially now in the last few years, they look at those who are very present on social media, like, oh, I want to do what these guys do and stuff, whatever. But the example that I always give my students is like, well, I want to go and play for the NBA. So I go for a tryout, and, well, I mean, I can't reach the rim. I can't dunk. Game over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you are in a cave, game over could be like, game over, you're stuck and you panic and you don't come out.
Yeah.
So I don't think it is, do it, but I would not publicize it so much.
No, for sure. And another question I've actually asked before, and it's a question that I like to ask explorers is, so you're exploring, it's like, oh, okay, what's around that other corner? Maybe there's a small restriction. You're like, oh, I want to get in there. I want to find out. At what point are you like, I need to turn around? Like obviously there's gas limitations, there's limitations to it, but when, there's something you have wide open, you have all the things on your side, plenty of gas, plenty of time, there's the restriction. Like, is there a point where you're like...
It's a very thin line. Well, it changes a lot depending on what kind of cave you're doing. If it is very small cave, it is different than if you're doing a very deep cave. If you are, whether you are in open circuit or in CTR, in Rebreather, changes a lot. Way back when, it was only me and my comfort level, because it was open circuit, but it was also very shallow cave. So, well, yeah, okay, how stuck are you? Well, I'm pretty stuck. Am I okay with it? Am I confident that I can go out easily? Yeah, well, no problem. I think I can turn around right there. So it was just you mentally. Then with the years and with the experience, you realize more about, you learn to read the cave better. So you learn to just like see what the water does and where you want to go and all of those things. That's what experience does.
Yeah.
So that's why it is so important to give it time. Don't be too much in a hurry. Obviously, that's something when you are 20-something year old, you don't realize, right? It takes a little bit of time, but that would be the suggestion that I would give everybody. I mean, that cave has been there for millions of years, thousands of years. So not millions, I mean, like, it's just like, let's not exaggerate, thousands of years. So, dude, it's gonna be there tomorrow. So don't push it too much. Now, with deep caves, with CCRs, there's different limitations, like the scrubber duration, like the bailout you take and stuff. But after so many years, it's something that you know when it's time to call. For example, now I'm doing everything with Aria, that you know, but mostly with us, and now with Beyond the Sump, we had an amazing team. We had 6 people, I think, or 6 or 7 people, I should count, that were able to do like dives over 10 hours and over 100 meters, which is very unlikely to find in a team. And I did the last 2 push dives of the project. One was 12, one was 13 hours. But especially on the first one, which I did with my usual buddy, I didn't have to call the dive and stuff, where I basically look at each other and we know it's time to come back.
Yeah.
So you just develop this, it's like even when we're looking at the computer and seeing that you already have 5 hours of deco and the way back, which will bring it up, you already know. It keeps going, but for example, where I stopped on the last dive, there's like a very extreme sawtooth profile, and from like 117 we stopped at 80 meters. And there's a shaft looking straight up, going black up, but I mean, like, as I said, it was 13 hours like this. And you just know that you're not prepared. I mean, you're prepared physically and probably mentally to do 5 or 6 hours more. But the habitat, the scrubber, there's all of those elements that you just know that is the limit for now. I can go back, but I need to be more prepared.
Yeah.
And this kind of stuff. So, again, it's hard to give, sorry for the long answer.
No.
It's kind of hard. Good. It's kind of hard to give you like the exact moment because it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
So I would say, to make it short, it's based on your experience and your feeling for it. And you get wiser with time, or at least I think so. I want to think so, you know.
Okay. So I'm just curious, because when you start talking about, like, you know, 6-hour dives, 7-hour dives, 13-hour dives, how, when you first started getting into that sort of time, how is that going? You know, because that's got to be pretty tough. I mean, you think, you know, being in the water, I mean, I think max is maybe like 2 hours I've ever been in the water, like max. And it's probably really shy, probably like an hour, 30, 40, something like that. So you know that you're about to get in the water and you're not going to come out for 12 or 13 hours. Like, talk about like that mentality a little bit.
Yeah, also in here is very, very different from situation to situation. Like, just in water time, before this last expedition that we had, I think we had 4 post dives of 8, 11, 12 and 13 hours just on SAMP 2, which is where the exploration would continue. Before that, my longest in water time, so just without coming out and without doing multiple siphons and sumps, was 10 hours 15 minutes. And that 10 hours 15 minutes, I remember the exact duration of it, because I was like, wow, it seemed like it was 3 hours, because it was a very different dive, because it was here. It was in Shunanha, in one of the caves. In the first cave that I explored, I managed to go back to 3 years ago. Because 3 years ago, when we started to have Fathom Rebreathers and proper scooters and stuff, I was able to go back to a line that I had to abandon because it was just too far in 2011. And the average depth for this dive is 5 meters. So it used to take us like 2 hours and a half just to get to the point where we're now exploring. And the cave is not a tunnel, but you just like pull the trigger and like have to slap yourself to try to stay awake. It is like you get distracted, you smash yourself onto a rock, because it's like restrictions and flow and pushing. Like, so that was a very different feeling. It was a 10-hour, you get exhausted after that kind of dive, but you don't even realize it until you're out, because you're always challenged, you know?
Yeah.
In compared to that, my longest day in a cave was in Croatia, and that was tough because we would go out early in the morning, come out in the middle of the night. I think we did 18, 19 hours, but that was okay. We know there's a sump 5, let's explore it, and from sump 5 we found another 5 sumps, so we stopped in front of sump 10. In that case, the in-water time was 5 hours, 4.5, 5 hours. But the challenges are different because the water is cold, it's 7 degrees Celsius. The cave is cold because it's 10 degrees. There's a lot of in and out, and every time, you know, you have to be careful with the rocks not to slip and stuff. And then, like, we found a huge dry cave area with boulders. It's very, very different. Yes, coming back to the original question, this is the last thing we did is the toughest, because it's like, I mind way more, just I'm more like concerned of like being there, doing nothing, just deco. And that is the tough part. But, well, like I have to say the habitat is a game changer, because yeah, you do a long deco outside of the water, but you know that like later you're gonna get in the habitat and you're gonna stay there for like 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever, but you're warm.
Yeah.
You're warm, you drink, you have your stock of food, you have your energy gels, you have your stuff, you have your electrolytes to drink. I don't think that you can do the kind of diving we've been doing last month with those up and down profiles and stuff as safely as you can do it with a habitat. Without it, it would be like, you know, it gets very tricky. So you have to basically get more technological.
Yeah.
Like having a habitat like that, which is basically a giant rebreather, stuff like this. If you want to push the limit, you have now the possibility to do it with the right technology. So again, just be patient until you find somebody that can offer you that kind of organization, and then the exploration becomes again available to you.
Man, that seems pretty wild. Yeah, and I've talked to a few other divers, and that, you know, just hearing about habitats, seeing habitats kind of, you know, just through reading and everything, and it definitely seems like, you know, in the last, well, I mean, I'm sure habitats have been around for a while, but just the technology has been able to push the exploration a lot more, so it's kind of cool to, you know, see that, just because, you know, I on one side of it, I have heard like, oh, everything's explored. There's, you know, there's everything's been explored, and it's like, is it though? You know, there's
far from it.
Yeah, there's tons of technology that is enabling people to go further. So it's kind of exciting time if you think about it, right? Just because of the rebreathers and just
and Earth is big.
Yeah,
Earth is a pretty big place. We haven't explored all of the karst, and that goes for dry caving as well as underwater passages. It's, you know, there are places that used to be inaccessible, but now, like as you're saying, like technology opens the door to like a lot of more experiences. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned habitat that's been around for a while. Yeah, if you read Stanton's book, he talks about like grabbing a trash bin and using that as a habitat. All you have to do is like be creative and want it bad enough, and you'll find a way, basically.
So I have a couple questions. I'd actually like to hear more about Beyond the Sump, but I was told, well, I wasn't told the story, but I was told to ask because I heard it was a funny story, of a time that you crashed a wedding in a cave.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were diving in a pit, and you know, like, it's not, one of the things about cave exploration is, you remember that, you just, like, you saw in your class, is landowner relationships, right?
Yes.
And it's not always easy. Caves tend to be in places in which sometimes culturally you struggle to get people understand why it is important, and they look at you like, yeah, but why do you want to go there? You know, like, well, so everybody knows the pit is a pretty famous sighting here. Unfortunately, we got access a couple of times, and I believe we can get access again. It would be awesome to be able to put a habitat in there. That I doubt is going to happen because it's going to ruin the pictures, and everybody that goes to the pit now wants to take the amazing picture with light beams and not having a habitat in there. There actually used to be a habitat, and it was a very good one. It was like one of those big rotoplast water tanks.
Oh, okay.
And I remember it pretty well, but the pit was not popular. There was no street to it and stuff. Anyway, to make it short, we had to access from another cenote, which has an amazing cavern area, and turn into this kind of like Instagram location influencer thing, because the cavern is like amazing. And we went for this like early dive in the morning, but we ended up doing I think like 8-9 hours, because you know, like for a while at depth beyond 90 meters, so it's 80 minutes to get to the pit from this cenote if you take your time, because you have lots of equipment, Fathom Rebreathers and so on. And then on the way back you do most of your deco, and then you know, you get to the cenote, you do your deco at 3 meters, 10 feet, and then you just come out. We came out, and I think it was about 6:30 in the evening, and everything was dark. Well, like, fair enough. They switched the generator off, so there's no artificial light in the cavern area, and we just pop out, and it's like incense. They were burning this copal, this kind of tree which smells very good and is used for like Mayan ceremonies. There was this guy dressed as a shaman, and where the platform is, where you just go out, there was this huge crown of flowers, all candles lit, the couple getting met, the shaman doing the ceremony, and we're like, shit. There's like switch the lights off, switch the light. And well, we ended up going around the corner in the cavern, and I think we did another like 45, 50 minutes on the loop. So I mean, in the end, it was good. It was like surface decompression before starting moving stuff around. Yeah, it was like, they found it funny afterwards.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. They were like, oh, guys, I'm really, really sorry. We did not expect that. So they were pretty cool with it.
Oh, that's probably got to be, I mean, I'm sure all weddings are memorable, but that's got to be one for the storybooks. Yeah, we were getting married.
As these guys came out with like lights coming from the dark. Yeah, it was like, I mean, well, they are in Mexico, so we know that it's not that people are diving, but I don't think they expect somebody like, we were there all day, and these guys just came out like, they're like, whatever, after a few hours. I was like, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I would like to hear a little bit more about Beyond the Sump. So how did that get started? How did you get involved? Tell me a little bit about it.
I guess by luck, because it was awesome. I think Zeb, Lily, and Andreas Glocher were the two that originally started it. I hope I'm not wrong, because it could be also, but I'm sure there was somebody else. But again, I am lazy from this point of view, so I tend not to read everything that's published on Facebook and stuff, whatever, just these things that I'm more interested in. And of course I knew what Beyond the Sump was, but I didn't look into the origin of it. I knew Zeb was one of the main guys, world-class caver, first of all, and he's like a caver instructor in the US. He's one of the big guys that teaches a lot of, he's a firefighter, so, but his stuff is like to teach rope.
Yeah.
Amazing, like really, like whenever you see that there's a rope involved and stuff, it's like, okay, you can see craftsmanship, like when people like, okay, it's been doing it for a while here. So my friend Oz did a project in part of Sistema Purificación, which is one of the big projects here, and it is in the north of Mexico. They did a cave called Infernillo, underwater, one of the underwater parts of this purification project, and Zeb was there, so they did some diving together. So Zeb was like, well, like, I really think you're a very strong cave diver, like, what about participating to the project? And then we got to meet Charlie Robertson.
Yeah.
And we got to meet Charlie. Me and Oz got offered a pretty good deal. Charlie was interested in having us as explorers for Fathom, and we're like, yeah, really nice. And Charlie is involved with like Beyond the Sump. So it came from those two parts. They heard about us before. They knew that like whenever we have free time and free money, extra money to spend, hard earned I would say, but I mean that's a different story, and we would just use it to go exploring. So we know we're active in here, we're active in Europe, so I think they liked our skills and our like dedication more than anything. And and luckily we got invited to the project, and it was like 10 people, everybody getting along, everybody working pretty hard, and we were pretty happy with the results.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about the dives and the push dives?
So the main dive, the main cave is called Rio Luapan, and we had the perfect location because we had a hut which will accommodate the enormous amount of gear and all of us on the top floor, which was at the bottom of the mountain of the Cerro Rabon, which is, I don't know if you're familiar, but Oaxaca is where Bill Stone, Peter Sprouse, Bill Steele, like the American cavers have been coming here for like, I would say 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's where Huatla is, Cheve. We're basically on the other side of the mountain.
Okay.
And so it's a historical place for caving in general. So Rio Luapan was the main one. And as a side project, there was Tilpan, which is another cave that they dived, if I'm not wrong, in 2019. They scouted it down, they realized it went super deep, and that's an easy access cave because it goes from a lake, and that's going to be next year's project.
Oh, okay.
Charlie and Zeb, we did a couple of dives there. Also, me and Oz did a dive, but ours was like at the end just a cleanup, so we didn't go that deep. but Charlie and Zeb went already down to 140 meters, and there's multiple layers. It's very complex, so that's gonna be like again next year. So for this year, we focused on Rio Luapa. The complication of it, what makes it challenging, is that you have to go, of course, up the mountain, bring all the gear up the mountain. There's a waterfall, which wasn't so bad to climb.
That's just 10 people doing all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to me, the most admirable thing is the guys that come and really, really just like work like crazy just to make it happen. I mean, you're not gonna do the push dive, but you just like, okay, we need to refill this, we need to take this scooter up, we need to take the batteries down. Like it wasn't my first big team project, but this time I was very, very like, the selflessness and the common goal mentality was amazing. So you just go up this waterfall and you are in an enormous, beautiful cavern area, and there starts sump 1. So you do sump 1, which is like half an hour, not so deep. I say like not even 80 feet. I think it's 24 meters max. So you pop out in sump. In between the sumps, you have another smaller waterfall to climb, a Tyrolean to bring the equipment through, but it's not. And then you have the entrance of sump 2. And sump 2 was explored down to 100 meters. There is, what makes it interesting, that goes down to almost 80, then up to 40. I hope I'm not making, this is a general profile. Yeah. I think the numbers are more accurate, but I will have to check it. Then down to 70 again. And then the real pain is the last hill, which is 16 meters, which is, 55 feet more or less. So what do you use, feet or meters normally?
I obviously grew up with feet, but I've transitioned over into meters, so you're totally fine just saying meters.
Yeah. 16 meters right at the end. And that's where the bottom part, the 100 meters part, starts. So from there, we did multiple push dives, and on the third one, we got down to 117. And then up to 90, and on the last one up to 90 we went through a couple of restrictions because the whole cave is huge.
Yeah.
But where it stops and it goes up in chimneys. We went through a restriction, it opened up again, and that's what I was like telling you earlier on, we had to stop at 80 with a vertical shaft going up. So I think we added like 600 meters, which is not much if you look at the numbers in here. Because in here, if you're like, yeah, whatever, we had days in which we would add a kilometer to a cave in one day. But the thing is, it's 117 meters.
Yeah.
So it's deep, it's a little bit colder, and there's a lot of deco.
Is the visibility just crystal clear like out here?
No, it's not terrible, but it's not that great. I would say visibility is like 8-10 meters. Oh, okay. So for example, the tunnel, which is all in between 112 and 117, that was a part that we found, that me and Oz found, and that was amazing because first of all, nobody went through it. And it was smaller, so let's say it was like 5 to 6 meters floor to ceiling and 10 meters wide. So that is the one in which we could clearly see where the cave was going. And that was an amazing run. Like just scooter and survey, someone was scooting behind me with the scooter. It's like, it was amazing. But then again, on the last part where the cave got big again, we have multiple choices. It was awesome. I think we're gonna have to come back with a double habitat, possibly, or we're gonna have to rethink logistics. The amazing thing about that is the cavers, another group of cavers who are very active in the area, and they're coming from up. There is like about 800-900 meters of rock.
Oh, no shit.
On top. And those guys will go as far as they can.
Yeah.
So they might find the water. So if they find the water, that would be amazing because that gives us, we're like one on top of another. So we're right under them. So once we know where they get to, then we can target because we found multiple chimneys going up. So yeah, it will be pretty interesting.
So when you, before, I guess like the planning stages of a project like that, when you get there, do you know who's doing the push dives? I'm assuming there's like the base camp before the first sump. That's where everything is. And then you do your push dives. Like, is it known, or is it like, okay, I'll do this first dive, or is it like, how's that all planned out?
We kind of took turns, so to speak. So it worked pretty well because everybody got a chance. I honestly think that the hardest was the first that Steve Lambert and Zeb Lilly did, because they did it without the habitat. So it was shorter. It was a sort of reconnaissance, going back to what they knew, finding the lines, fixing the lines eventually. But they had to do I don't remember now, I think it was, again, 8 hours, but it was 8 hours, and the whole deco, was done without the habitat and stuff. It was the toughest. Me, I had the easy part because 2 dives had already been done there, and I was lucky to do the last 2. So to find the biggest amount of cave, I'm always lucky from that point of view for whatever reason, and thank you guys. But yeah, for me it was easy. I mean, we were watching movies in the habitat. And nowadays, it's not like Stanton's bin. You have to breathe in your breather. And we were extremely comfortable with double scrubber. So we had a backup scrubber. So the whole thing was a rebreather. We did not have to breathe from the loop. You can eat, you can stop. And we keep our PO2 in check. You hear with some CO2, you just add some extra O2, and here you go, take your phone, download some stuff, some movies, and just all right. So the major risk once you are in the habitat is you choose a movie, which apparently was the case with John and Oz, which sucked. So they were not very happy about the movie choice, but overall it's pretty comfortable. The thing that was horrible for me was on the first push dive, because my neoprene neck seal got so thin, and probably I didn't fold it enough from the deep diving, so probably I didn't fold it enough. And on the first dive, I flooded while exploring. So the horrible part was the deep stops before I could go over the last far-in hill. Because after that, you are on the trigger, you're going to get to your last ascent, and then you have a habitat. But there we were I was freezing, I was a kilometer in, and we started doing deco at 60. So from 60 to, I think, at 21, we just screw this. We just went over and keep going, We just quickly went over the hill. We took that little risk, but anyway, it wasn't a big deal. But up to that last stop, but then, okay, we're good to go, it was horrible. It was so we're pretty spoiled.
That's I definitly hope to have more of the group. I'll send an invite and try to get that together. That would be a lot of fun to just hear you guys talk about how the project went, what went on. But I have just the last couple questions for you before I finish up. So do you have what would you say, and I'm sure there's a lot, you obviously explored quite a bit. Is there one that kind of stands above the rest, out of the explorations that you've done? Your favorite one, funnest one? It doesn't have to be the most extensive, longest one, but what, or maybe it is, I don't know, just kind of, is there, and if there's not, that's
I'm very grateful that I have multiple chances to do very different projects. Now my interest is in what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So in the last few years, CCRs and deep, I will never be concerned if I have to go to a dive and I know that it's very small cave now and stuff, whatever, because that has been my expertise. Let's say for the longest, I've done it for the longest time and stuff. But the deep is something that I respect a lot because I don't have the same experience on, and it's very challenging. So for me, that is the biggest rewards. So I would say this, although it's not the most extensive and stuff. This was probably the exploration that I enjoyed the most.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm from Europe, I'm from Italy. So I love everything that I do in Europe, because in Europe it's not so easy to find a cave. And we're lucky. Like, for example, this summer we're going to go to Bosnia, and there's so much unexplored cave, and we always find stuff. But the exploration that has a special place in my heart is an exploration that I've been doing with my friends back home. It's 45 minutes from my hometown in the north of Italy, and it's called Aquanera. And the first time that I went there was 2001, if I'm not wrong, and I was just like carrying stuff. Because it's in a valley, you have to carry equipment for like a couple of kilometers.
Oh, wow.
It's tough. But it's amazing because we sleep in a mountain hut that they give us, and it's the whole experience. So with these guys, I've been caving and cave diving for over 20 years.
Oh.
And every time we go back, we find something new. And I think it was in 2018 that we had a breakthrough, because we were always, so you get down on the valley, you do sump one, which is like 250 meters long. Then you are in the belly of the mountains. You walk for like half a kilometer, and then you have sump three. Sump two is a side passage, so this is called sump three, although now you can go from sump one directly to sump three directly. Sump three, and for the longest time we were like open circuit, limited time. That is pretty cold, so you don't have much time, so we're always going around in circle in side mount areas. And I think in 2018 we found this fracture, followed the fracture that went straight deep, found a huge fault, and from there the cave goes one direction, and it goes towards a cave that we know is 3 kilometers north.
Oh, no shit.
So now, last year we did an amazing group project. Me and Oz focused on doing the proper survey of the whole thing, because Oz is a genius in surveying and stuff. He's a geek, so like that's what he does, but a cool one, no, just kidding. And we prepared, while we were like planning for our survey, the bush dive for two of my good friends. And one of them is Daniele, is the guy that used to work at the Irish pub with me.
Oh.
So, and he'd been investing so much effort and time and money on equipment, buying the CCR and doing the training in the last 5 or 6 years, which for me that is one of my fondest memories. To be able to get the first guy who ever took me in the water to do the push dive, and it was like, and we surveyed all the way behind them. I think we were short like 200 meters because I had problems with my CCR, my old CCR. But whatever, I'm not gonna get into that. So I had problems with the CCR and stuff, so we're missing the last 200 meters of the survey. But from a depth, it was all about 40 meters, 30 meters. Now the guys got to 4. So this year we plan on going out, camping out, hopefully found some walking distance to cover some. I think there's still like a couple of kilometers to get to the other side. So that for me is, I'm doing it with my friends. My best friend here, and with
this
my
year
child.
you're planning to do?
We go every year. Every year. So September, October. I hope they have a chance to go before, so they realize if it goes up and if there is a possibility to do a camp, so we have more of an idea about logistics. But yeah, we're definitely going for like a couple of push dives in between September and October.
Awesome. I feel like I'm just writing down all these things that I have to have you back on the podcast. It would be really awesome to hear about like a lot of these projects. But my last question for you before I let you go is somebody, and I know it's easy or not easy, but I guess it's easy for someone to be like, oh, I want to go and explore. I want to go and lay new line, find Virgin Cave. It's easy for somebody to say, obviously a lot more difficult for somebody to do. But somebody that, is kind of in your position when you first arrived to Mexico, you knew you wanted to explore. What advice would you have for that person that wants to go out and find Virgin Cave?
Well, obviously it was easier in this area when I was here because a lot of stuff, I think. We went from 800 kilometers of discovered passages here, only in Quintana, to twice that. So a lot of cave is gone, so to speak, is already explored. So you have to go further into the jungle. But we found new caves with the cavers 2 weeks ago. Now they're 4 kilometers in, but when Oz is back, we're gonna have to go and check them out, and we will go and check them out. So it is harder, but if you wanna do it, just go. I mean, same thing in Europe. It's easier if you are in the circles because people, permissions in different countries and stuff and whatever. But you have to start because, I mean, obviously it's not easy because you're not in the loop and stuff, but find a way, go. If you're here, go hike in the jungle. Go hike in the jungle. You know more or less where the cenotes are. It's not that there's a river here, and a river over there, and in this area there's nothing, it must be nothing. No, there's possibly, Akumal, for example, is a place where the limestone layer is thicker, so there's like less entrances, and they're not normally big. They have to be big because of the different geology. But there is cave, so just, it's hard, but if that's what you want, go and deserve it, basically.
I love it, man. I love it. That's awesome. Awesome advice. Just go out there and get it. Just a quick question before I let you go. So do you still, I'm assuming obviously with the exploration projects you're doing dry caving, but do you ever just find yourself out just dry caving, no gear or no like scuba gear or anything, just out?
Oh, yeah. Well, not as much as I would like because, to be honest, I admire a lot what the guys do here when it's all horizontal, but there's so many bugs, so much stuff. I love vertical pits.
Okay.
And back home there's vertical pits. And one of these friends that I told you about that I've been caving since forever with, they are doing an exploration. One of them is involved in an exploration of cave, which is just pits. And it's one of the mountains back home, and it goes down. They've been working on it, and when I did it back in 2001 the first time, but I think also the second time that I did it, which was 5-6 years ago, it used to be 500 meters deep. And now they broke the depth of 700 meters, and they keep going, and they're finding new rooms, and they're camping there. So I already told them, this is something that I miss, this is something that I want to do. I feel fit enough. I suffer because I don't have their technique, and these guys do rope like we dive. So it is pretty tough to be at that level if you don't do it enough. But I'm fit enough and I'm up for it. So I just told them already I want to sleep in and do a 2 days at least. Push in Monte Oro.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, I really, really appreciate you participating in the podcast today. It's been amazing to hear about your journey. Like I said, I'll definitely, because I there's just so many questions I have, on just your exploration and push dives, sump dives, things like that. So I definitely would love to have you back on at some point. But yeah, either way, man, I really, really appreciate you joining the podcast today.
Oh, quite the opposite. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.